Hello, all the crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. And last time we talked about loops in GameMaker, and we talked about the most basic kind of loop that GameMaker allows us to write, and that is the repeat loop, which is simply a control flow statement which allows the game to repeat an action a certain number of times, or repeat a block of code more generally a certain number of times. And we came up with a very silly example of just using the repeat statement when the player hits the spacebar to spawn a bunch of scarecrows at random positions near where the player happens to be standing at any given moment. And the repeat loop is fun. It allows you to, it's basically exactly what it says on the tin, as I like to say. We use the repeat statement or the repeat loop to spawn a bunch of players, spawn a bunch of scarecrows on or around the player whenever the player hits the spacebar. And we had some fun with that. So the repeat loop is great. It's basically what it says on the tin. It does exactly what it says it does. But it also is, because of its simplicity, the repeat loop is also somewhat inflexible, and there are some things that just don't really work well with it. And in this video, we're going to talk about a way of writing loops that are a little bit more involved. Not really too much more involved, but the while loop is another way of writing a loop in GameMaker. And instead of taking a specific fixed number of repetitions, the way the repeat loop does, the while loop will continue to execute as long as the condition inside the parentheses, so this is going to be some true-false condition and not a number, the way that a repeat statement takes. This loop is going to execute as long as this continues to be true. So ignore the red squiggle in there. What would be a fun way to show this off? Let's say that you want a maximum of, say, 20 scarecrows in the world. And we can say, let's just make that a variable. Max scarecrows equals 20. And GameMaker, there's a couple of different functions in GameMaker which pertain to, like, getting information about the I key on my keyboard is stuck down. Alright, you know what? I am retiring this keyboard. It has been causing me quite a few problems recently. Alright, I got myself a new keyboard. So, there's a couple of functions in GameMaker which allow you to sort of fetch information about instances in various ways, and one of those is going to be an instance number. And if you call the instance number function with a particular object type as a parameter, this will just tell you how many objects of this instance exist in the room currently. So if I wanted to make sure that up to max scarecrows spawn every time I hit the spacebar, I can say while instance number of the obj underscore scarecrows is less than the max scarecrows value, we can spawn a new scarecrow. And this is going to cause 20 scarecrows to spawn the first time I hit the spacebar, all around me. And after that, it's not going to do it again. And 20 might be like a little bit much, because we can it's kind of hard to count them when there's so many of them on top of each other like that. We can count them. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 scarecrows that spawned. And now if I continue to hit the spacebar, nothing happens because there's already 10 of them. This, of course, can, if you were to go and drag some of these scarecrows into the room ahead of time, it will, the instance number function will take them into account, and the while function, the while loop here, will behave accordingly. So this is only going to spawn 7 new scarecrows because there are 3 that were already in the room. Let's get rid of those. I think one of the examples I used in the last video was something like, what if you want to, like, spawn a certain number of monsters in the room with the player, or something like that. And it's definitely possible to use both the repeat loop and the while loop for that sort of thing. In this case, the behavior will differ slightly. The repeat loop will spawn exactly 10 monsters. The while loop will spawn up to 10 monsters, accounting for ones that already exist. If you wanted to, you could math this out to make this work with the repeat loop. You could figure out how many monsters you need to spawn to get up to 10. There's a whole bunch of ways you could accomplish the same thing, and there really is not a correct way of doing it in this case. So something else you can do with while loops, and because, like I said, you can do pretty much everything about 5 different ways in computer programming most of the time, what I'm about to do here is something that most people would probably write in a different way, but I want to start here because I like to try to build up as much from scratch as possible in these videos. So let's go back to the repeat loop. Let's go back to repeat max scarecrows. Let's go back to this. We're going to spawn an exact number of scarecrows every time, and not using the GameMaker instance number counter that is provided to us with the while loop. So if you wanted to rewrite this exactly as a while loop, we could say, let's make a second variable. Let's call it var current scarecrows, and we can initialize that to 0. And we can say, instead of saying repeat max scarecrows, we can say while current scarecrows is less than max scarecrows. Then we can run this code. So this code in this loop will execute while this continue is true, while this condition is true, and because neither of these values are actually going to change at any point in this loop, what we're going to have if we just run this is going to be an infinite loop, and infinite loops are usually something that you want to avoid. So what we can do to avert that is we can, at the end of this, say current scarecrows plus plus, or plus equals 1, or however you want to write that out. And now when we run this, we are not going to have an infinite loop. We are going to have a loop which runs 10 times. And we're going to spawn 10 scarecrows around the player. And what we have now is kind of like the archetypical loop in computer programming. So GameMaker's own repeat loop, internally, all it is it's sort of like a shorthand for something that's basically this. It has a loop counter, as it's known. It has the number of iterations, which is the number that you provide it, the 10 repetitions or whatever. And internally, it will just keep track of a loop counter like this until the loop counter exceeds the number of repetitions. In fact, writing loops like this is kind of like the prototypical version of a loop in computing. Way back in the early days of computer programming languages, when things that we might recognize as modern languages were first being developed, loops tended to look something like this. For loops and other fancier control flow structures weren't added to the C programming language until a little bit later. And very much the opposite of GameMaker's repeat loop. That makes the while loop kind of infinitely flexible. And it makes the while loop kind of the most general purpose loop that there is in the language. So there are some things to keep in mind. The infamous infinite loop. So the simplest infinite loop is just saying while true, because this condition will kind of by definition never be false. If you run this and if I hit the spacebar, the game will freeze. So I hit the spacebar, the game is not responding, you can see the animation stopped. If I were to WASD around, nothing is going to happen because the game is just infinitely spawning new scarecrows because this condition in the loop is never false. Can we get out of there? No? We're having a little bit of trouble getting out of there. Let's force it to stop using the stop button there. So that's an infinite loop. This is generally something you want to avoid. Most of the time, if you write an infinite loop, it'll be something by accident. You won't actually ever write while true most of the time. Very rarely you might. But usually if you write something like this, it'll be an accident. You might, like, current scarecrows minus minus or something. And this will also create an infinite loop because the loop counter is now going down instead of up. And now, just like before, the game is never going to respond. Definitely be careful with this. There's all kinds of other ways to accidentally create infinite loops. And unfortunately, whenever you do it, your game won't be nice and friendly and show you an error message telling you what happened. It'll just freeze and it will stop working. And if you're lucky, you'll get the like spinny icon from the operating system telling you that the program is not responding or something like that. But infinite loops are usually something to be avoided. Another thing that you might want to be aware of, and this is something that some people assume that loops do and they don't, is this will happen all at once. This will happen immediately. All iterations of the loop will happen like before the next line of code happens, before the next line of code is run outside the loop. And some people assume that if you write a while loop like this, it'll happen like continuously every frame. And that is not something that while loops are for. You can't use this to spawn 10 scarecrows over the span of, for example, 10 frames, or 10 seconds, or some other unit of time. That's just not how it works. There are other ways that you can make GameMaker do things like that continuously over time. We will be getting to there later, but a simple loop like this is not how you would do something like that. Code executes in the order that you tell it to. There is no, like, at least not currently, there is no defer command or await command or asynchronous control flow structures in GameMaker. There very well might be in the future, but as of whatever today's date is, that is not the calendar. As of whatever today's date is, that is not part of GameMaker. So I think I will leave this off here. Next time, we're going to talk about the for loop, I think. The for loop is probably the most popular version of writing a loop. It has a lot in common with the while loop, but it is a bit of a syntactic shorthand. which makes it a little bit faster to write certain things. And I think that's what we're going to talk about next time. So, my name is Michael. I like Wizards and Dragons and making games. If you want the code that I've written today, again, there isn't too much of it, but I will post a GitHub repository down in the description of this video. You should all go check out Wizarducks and the Lost Hat, which is one of the games that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. I like to pitch it as a sort of a top-down Zelda, except you're a magic duck who casts magic spells. Link to the Steam page can be found down below. I have a Patreon, so if you wanted to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places, and if you felt like pledging, I definitely would appreciate it. I hope you all found this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Zach Robinson, Squarecrow, Spide-Eye Games, Pixelated Pope, Paradox, Nykotic, Manta Ray, GameMaker, GameArt Indie, Edward Holt, DJ Gibbles, Brenton, Bokeh Dev, and Argo the Knot for supporting these videos. If you want to join the ranks of these very cool people, head on down to the Patreon page in the video description to join the fun.